Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching and listening to the Sal Greco Show, a live edition of the Sal Greco Show. Thanks for watching. If you can, please hit the like button, the share button, the subscribe button, hit the notification button when you can. And listen, I also advise if you look back at some of the previous episodes, there's a lot of content on there. Some that some of the stuff that was referenced in those prior episodes you'll hear about in this one. But there's a lot happening, you know, again, in New York City Police Department, but New York City in general, which is kind of where we're focused on yet again today. There's a story that came out just, I believe it was yesterday, and it right here, Manhattan and Brooklyn rents hit unusual all-time highs in February. Rents typically peak in July or August. Records will last set in summer 2023. The Manhattan median rent increased for the fifth time, rising 6.4% to $4,500. That's $4,500 for an apartment, some of them being shoe boxes, okay? Average rent per square foot in Brooklyn set a record for the second month in a row. So just for you to understand that there's people that are paying $4,500, New York City taxpayers, $4,500 for a room just to sleep in Manhattan. And you had illegal immigrants running around at the Roosevelt Hotel, the Walcott Hotel on the government's arm. Now, you're also hearing that the Justice Department is, I guess, now suing the migrant shelters or the hotels for information. But maybe there's a misconnect here. You have the illustrious mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, who just went on Capitol Hill and announced that he spent $6.9 billion in migrant shelter funding and all kinds of stuff they were doing for illegal immigrants. So why is it so that those illegals were getting free rooms, but taxpayers can't afford their own rent? They can't even get a room at this hotel. Not a veteran, not anyone who's homeless. It was just the illegals. But he spent $6.9 billion. And remember, there was a member of the administration, an aide, right underneath him, his deputy mayor, another thug, Timothy Pearson, who went around, as we all know, when it states to the migrant shelter contracts and referencing the migrant shelter said, "Where's my crumbs?" And crumbs is the theme of this administration. So unless the Justice Department is investigating, once again, Eric Adams, which you'll hear his name come up numerous times in this episode, and Timothy Pearson and the rest of the cronies in the Eric Adams administration that allowed this, I don't know what kind of investigation this is. So like a pop in circumstance with Tom Homan yesterday saying how Eric Adams was helping him with public safety. I'd like to reference once again, I don't know if Tom Homan knows the laws of New York City. The police department and Rikers, people in Rikers Corrections, cannot help ICE with anything other than there's a criminal warrant and it's been issued through the courts and it's some kind of criminal case. Civilly cooperating ICE detainer warrants, they're not allowed because there's a law that's been in place forever. And in fact, it was reintroduced and repackaged in 2013 or 14 under Bill de Blasio and the city council then. The New York City Police Department cannot cooperate. They can't call ICE detainer warrants. They're not allowed to run around like they're ICE agents. They'll lose their jobs and get penalized. And in fact, Serena Townsend, who is a former corrections commissioner, was on the show on Monday, and she actually said how she had cases that they had to discipline corrections officers that did that. So this myth that Eric Adams is helping with public safety is really, it's just another low information hook line to hook in low information people to try to feel bad for this guy. This guy is involved in so much mishigas, it's bubbling and coming out of the room at this point. But he is a hot topic as breaking news on him. But now I'm gonna bring on my guest, and listen, full disclosure, okay? He does represent me in my case against the city, but that's not what we're here to talk about. So I'm going to bring on the attorney representing the former lieutenant of the NYPD, Quatishia Epps, who I don't know if anyone saw this. She was on ABC News. She had a two-part, I guess it was like a two-part series where Monday night, there was one, about 7 minutes, 5 minutes. Tuesday night, it was about 3 or 4 minutes. There was a lot referenced there. I think we on the show have referenced this a lot, also on the Finest Unfiltered. But for starters, there's Eric Sanders. Eric, how are you? How you doing? How's everything today?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. You know, I don't do these that often.
Yes, I know. There's a lot. You are one that usually only speaks when you need to speak. So I consider it an honor to have you here. I think the last time you even publicly went anywhere was actually in my own case. But what I wanted you on for today is there's been a lot, not only in the news and the press, but it's people talking about the entire Quatishia Epps case against the New York City Police Department and particularly former Chief of Department Jeffrey Maddrey. So I don't know if you could give a little bit of the crux of the case and what went on, because you were also on ABC News. I saw there was the 2-part segment that I just said. So give the public a little bit of a synopsis of everything.
Well, basically, as you know, this is a civil case, which is what I'll primarily talk about, because there's a parallel investigation that's going on the criminal side, so I have to be careful how I describe it. But basically, she was an employee. She's alleging that she was a victim of quid pro quo sexual harassment at the hands of Jeffrey Maddrey, and then retaliated against when she started to withdraw and pull back from his abuse. That's the case in a nutshell.
I see. And it seems that this is a theme of not only the New York City Police Department, but under Eric Adams' administration. So before I go any further with the Epps case, this last 24 hours, if people don't know this, Eric Adams has his own sexual assault case. It stemmed from the 90s. And this woman that's suing him, I think is Lorna Bethuna, something her name is. She is suing Eric Adams using that clause from 30 years ago, whatever it was, that you could sue your tormentor or your abuser from years ago. It was a law that they used that was basically used to set up President Trump in his case against E. Jean Carroll. So then there was a deadline, and Eric Adams was one of the individuals that was sued in regards to this. And this woman claimed that she worked in the Transit Guardians in the NYPD as a police aide, which is a civilian. And she had this incident with Eric Adams, who at the time was a sergeant, and he was a member of the Transit Guardians. So it's funny that now this is breaking news that he tried to dismiss the case and the motion was denied. And the reason he tried to dismiss it is she's in bankruptcy. But again, this case is going to go forward, which means discovery's moving forward, and there'll be a deposition. And that should be something worth noting, because it's Eric Adams who will be deposed personally, and he can't escape this. So I don't know if you want to give a little bit of your take on this, or you want to.
It's interesting because I remember her, because a lot of people may not know, because I really don't talk about this in the public. I used to be the vice president of Guardians, and then became the president of NYPD Guardians around the same time Eric Adams was coming up as the sergeant of the Transit Guardians, and then eventually becoming the chairperson of the 100 Blacks. The Grand Council of Guardians before forming the 100 Blacks in law enforcement. So our ties go way back, more than 30 years now, and I got a couple of gray hairs to show that. It goes back. So I know who this woman is, and I remember when he talked about it, at least he claimed he didn't know her, but I find that interesting take. Well, during the course of the litigation that's happened so far, what's happened is that he tried to, have the case dismissed. The lawyers, and I think they still have 7 or 8 lawyers on. I've never seen anything like that before. But having 7 or 8 lawyers on this case, and he claims that he doesn't know her, then he didn't recall her. And during the interim, she went bankrupt in the state of Florida. And as if you don't know, when you become bankrupt, your estate, your bankruptcy estate, becomes part of a trustee. Then the trustee gets to manage control of all your assets, and a lawsuit is an asset. So what happened is the Corporation Council made a motion to dismiss, assuming that if they make the motion to dismiss, that the bankruptcy trustee won't keep the case and they'll dismiss it and the case. Well, the bankruptcy trustee had a trick for them. What she did was she hired Lorna's attorney from the original case, hired her special counsel, and then guess what? Motion denied. So the case is going to go forward through discovery, which means they're going to get to go through all the records, what they haven't turned over yet. I know the last time I read about this case, they weren't keeping track of, and they wouldn't give up the documents so she could help sustain when she worked there and when she met Eric Adams. But now all that's going to go forward unless this case settles.
So are they going to be able to actually question Eric? I mean, I may be a little bit off but are they going to be able to question him about anything? Because I see Patrick Donahue referencing this, the finances in regards to the transit guardians or anything that was going on with financing. Because he's mentioning that there was legal issues between the guardians and the formation of 100 Blacks in law enforcement. Eric is in the middle of that. Well,
if you remember, each one of these guardian associations, the history of it is each one of these agencies had their own guardians association at some point. The NYPD had one, transit, the TLC, the Taxi Limousine Commission, the school safety had their own. I mean, then they had umbrella groups. I mean, without getting too much into these organizations, but they all have their own finance groups, meaning they had their membership monies, and then they had the monies for the scholarship funds. And most of their money they raise is either through membership fees or through the dinner dance and the journals. In this case, if I remember right, the guardians are being sued, the corporation, correct, because they're each individual corporation. So yes, technically, you will be able to see all the books. The problem is you're talking about something that's more than 30 some odd years ago. And I'm not sure after post-merger, if the transit guardians still store their books from 30 some odd years ago. But I know the NYPD should have them. But then the question is, did they retain their books over the years? Because remember, you don't have an obligation to keep records requirements for 20, 30, 40 years.
I see. So, but it can be referenced. And I think the bottom line here is Eric Adams is in trouble. This is something that could, I want to know now, there's one other thing, because this goes for everything, including, we're talking about Epps's case. This General Municipal Law 50K2, correct? It states that you need a letter at least to the public, meaning the public can request a letter stating how are you representing as corporation counsel someone who represents or works for the city, whether it be in the mayor's office, city council, NYPD, because sexual harassment or assault doesn't fall in the scope of your duties last time I checked, and it's a law and it's also a crime. So how is Eric Maddrey, any of these other people, especially in the past, John Schell, Kaz Dawdry in the Dana Ratchling case, which is another case that Eric Adams is a defendant in, they are being represented by the city. How are they getting around GML 50K2?
Well, we know how they're getting around it, because they're not answering the question. The General Municipal Law 50K is designed to protect taxpayers' money. And in these cases, I'm pretty certain they don't have letters of representation because they don't meet the requirements. And no one has challenged them over it. And the only people that can challenge them on it, the city council, the controller's office, and those kind of entities, the Department of Investigation. On the outside, you may have the federal government come on and for public corruption. But those are the only people going to challenge them. So far, it's gone unnoticed and unchallenged, which is actually disturbing, because if you saw the bills of Timmy Pearson that was in the paper the other day, it was more than $300,000. And that is for cases that's not resolved. That's taxpayers' money.
That's actually 4 cases and it ongoing. 4 cases.
Right. And that's not taxpayers' money. That's not a settlement. That's not a jury verdict. That's just based on legal fees that we don't even see the records of those anyway. And what constitutes $300,000 worth of work.
So that means also the city might have to try to recoup this money, and it's involving all these defendants.
Well, who they're going to get it from? They're representing the defendants.
I guess, yeah. So they'll have to try to get the money back from Eric Adams and John Schell and Kaz Dawdry and Tim Pearson and Maddrey and all these people that were representing the city is actually representing them in any of these cases. That's Eddie Caban too. The list could go on and on. I've never seen anything like this.
Listen, I've been in this business a long time. I've never heard of the city going back to recapture funds from a defendant. Sometimes in cases they'll have a contribution, but I've never seen them go after them for legal fees. Although in a technical sense, even though they're not billing like what you would see other lawyers do. I'm sure they have internal billing to try to figure out what the cost of a case is. But as far as recouping money from defendants, I've never seen that before.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to set the stage here with is, as you could tell, there's a history is a problem. It seems to be a systematic problem stemming from the very top, because the fish usually stinks from the head, from Eric Adams all the way down. His cronies, these guys in the New York City Police Department, people in his administration, they have a problem with sexual harassment / assault, abuse, and all this other stuff. In fact, his pictured is Eddie Caban and Jimmy Rodriguez, and we'll get to that because it has to do with the nightclub extortion racket, which is another case that you're involved in. But going back to Epps now. So this case, you referenced a little bit about it, and of course, it's this quid pro quo that was going on there. So there's a lot that's happened in the last few days. There's pictures, there's videos floating around. I guess there's officers, I guess, had these WhatsApp chats. They were posting this all around, and I see a constant drumbeat of actually a low information drumbeat stating that she's not a victim, or quote unquote, she's I'm going to say the word, but you could fill in the blank, and that almost like this person deserves this, and that she was in on it, despite what people saw on ABC News, how she broke this down, and she was in tears. So they think it's like she's playing a victim, almost like it's crocodile tears. So
I'll say
what do you have to say for that?
And this is why it's very difficult for people to disclose. Now, if you know anything about victimology, and they teach you this in the police academy, it's not like it's a new concept. The problem is what you can't, or you try to ferret out, is the bias. What you're dealing with people with the bias. They have confirmation bias. They believe in their mind, or they engage in circular reasoning. Well, I believe this. She's not a victim, so she's not a victim. See, this is a fact I could use against that person. Meanwhile, victims are very complex. If you understand about human behavior, which is why I wrote about the 7 steps, the Sicilian steps of manipulating people with dark personalities, and you can get people to comply with things that they normally wouldn't comply with. So police officers can be victims. She's a victim. It's consistent with her discussion, her behavior is consistent with being a victim. And the bottom line is, whether they like it or not, she's a victim. She has a right to assert her rights. And believe it or not, when you put people down, such as I call a Q, right? When you put people like, what you do is you make people suffer in silence, which is why they come up with all these laws of disclosures where you could bring cases for 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And sometimes people don't agree with it. But if you understand human behavior, what's the one thing that we have? Shame, guilt. And what we do is suppress these feelings. And then we may never disclose what happened. Or they may disclose 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or even 30 years from now. That doesn't make it any less valid than if I told you right now this just happened to me, which is oftentimes that's not going to happen. And remember, when people abuse, they're more than likely abused by acquaintance people. In other words, people they know, co-workers, friends, family, next door neighbors. It's very rare you'll see a person from the outside, like the movies. Oh, this person from the outside will walk up and assault this person on the outside. No, most of the sex abuse and things like that, child abuse, elder abuse, all these abuses usually are from associated people. That's what makes it a more complex dynamic.
So another thing that's come up is the fact that Maddrey's attorney says that this is all consensual. I thought that consensual sex at the workplace, I thought the Supreme Court said that is a big no-no, and he admits to some kind of consensual relationship or something. Is there anything you could say to address that part?
Well, first of all, the Supreme Court said that, I don't know, since the 70s. I mean, I don't have to cite all the cases. You can Google this and find that information out. But the more important thing is, I talk about consent on my website, and I wrote specifically to talk about what is consent. Consent means complete obligation to each other that you agree to engage in a certain act, whatever it is. Consent is not, I'm your boss and I control your pay. I control whether you get suspended. I control whether you get promoted. That's not consent. And the last time I checked, I haven't seen an employer yet, including the New York City Police Department, that will say that you can have, quote, consensual sexual contact with an employee in the workplace.
I mean,
haven't seen that yet.
That's what I thought, but some people are saying, "Oh, they had this relationship," and I'm just trying to be fair and keep it.
I love okay, so I'm going to answer. I love relationships. These relationships. What is the common understanding of relationship? People try to get to know each other. They eventually build onto something. They build. They spend a period of time together. They maybe meet the friends. They may meet family. All these different things. If it's not that, what is it? Sexual contact. That's all it is. Because how we are as human beings is we try to relate to each other, develop relationships, etc. That's how the natural progression of a relationship is. If the only thing is that I'm having sexual contact with you at work, or I'm not taking you out anywhere, but I have it at work, and I had that in the Maria Mendez case, similar, then it's not consent, especially in police cars and every other place. And the public doesn't pay for that, by the way. The public pays for police officers to engage in law enforcement practices, public safety. That's what they're there for, not to engage in hijinks and use their authority to abuse people. And this is a problem that's endemic in the department, and it's been going on for at least since the inception of the police department. This is nothing new.
Yeah, I'm actually, there's something I wanted to ask. It's a follow-up to something else. But before that, there's the second part of this. Many people, it's ongoing, it's continuously online, keep referring to, well, Epps stole overtime. She stole overtime. She's a thief. She should be charged, indicted. She stole. Now, before you answer that, I personally, me and Marlon Bethel, another member of the Finest Unfiltered, a retired NYPD detective, we found this list that we had a whole show where we mentioned there's other people that were on this overtime list in excess of a ridiculous amount, some that are right underneath Epps, some that were over, 2 civilians that are way like ridiculous amount. So I guess, I don't know if you want to say these people are all stealing overtime. They've all been investigated. Some of them were questioned by the police department that had transfers and all kinds of stuff after this. So what do you say to someone who says, or people that keep repeating this drumbeat of Epps stole overtime, she belongs in a charge or in jail or whatever?
That's the most ridiculous thing I've heard in my life. If you even understand how employers' payrolls work, and it's not unique to the police department, any large employer, they have audit trails that at least take place every week, every 2 weeks, a month, so they can see very quickly, managers can see who is earning all this overtime. Guess what? There was none of this discussion about stealing anything. By the way, she didn't self-certify anyway. Until she started to pull back from the abuse, from the alleged abuse. Then all of a sudden, now there's this narrative that's being run in the paper because the police department loves to do that. They love to drop these, I call hit pieces out in the media, and this person is so bad, and it's sad in society in general. The first thing that goes out, we believe and say, oh my God, I can't believe she did that. Where's the evidence? Forget about your feelings. Forget about the emotion. Where's it? Where's the documents? And what's interesting, I had a very similar case like this in the trial room. And it was the Lieutenant Joe Ramirez case. And in that case, it was about department records. And you know what they were talking about? 28s. UF 28s. I don't want to get too much police jargon, but I'm going to talk about a leave of absence forms. And what they did, they brought his subordinate up for being AWOL for not having these 28s. Meanwhile, there's a whole big policy on it for police officers is AWOL, absent without leave. If the police officer is missing, there's supposed to be a whole search. Duty captain, go to the apartment, and they're supposed to look all over the place for this officer. Why? Because they're worried about the officer may be deceased, may be hurt, may have been kidnapped, because in police work, things happen to police officers, all right, and other police employees, but primarily police officers. No one ever looked for this guy. No one looked for him. And you know what the civilian said? She said, we assumed he was on vacation. So during the cross-examination, I got her to admit something that is part of the culture. Okay, were there 28s? No. So what did you do about the missing 28s? Oh, we just fill them out ourselves. Wait a minute. You mean the person that took the time off didn't fill them out? You filled them out for them? Yeah. What about the missing parts and roll call? Oh, no, we just marked vacation. And I said, how long you been doing that? Oh, at least 14 years. Whoa, wait a minute. So you're telling me that the forms don't always match up with reality? So my point is that people can try to draw all these conclusions, what they think it should be and what it's not. But part of this paper missing and things being filled out and assumptions are made are done all the time. And that was just in one unit. Imagine that going on department-wide. The point is there's a big difference between mismanagement and theft. This is mismanagement. Why? Because the people who are supposed to be monitoring this were part of the problem, meaning the police commissioner Caban, first deputy commissioner, and the other people, Maddrey and the other executive management people, including going all the way to City Hall, because they're supposed to monitor it too. And so is the city council. Their budget committees are also supposed to monitor it, and the controller as well. So there's no theft here. There's a whole bunch of mismanagement because they're all playing hijinks. And it only came out because of the sexual harassment that no one knew about until Epps went public.
Yeah, well, that first article is what people keep referencing as, and it looks like what I've seen from this administration, and in particular this cast of characters, is they put out something. They smear everyone. Dana Ratchlin was one. They smeared her. They smeared.
Wait. I've been smeared. All of a sudden now these videos and pictures, I put them out. I mean, I have another lawyer, alleged lawyer, I guess he is a member of the bar, that he should know these cases are not personal to the lawyers, and you should not try to besmirch the character of the other lawyer or try to undermine the business. Oh, maybe Sanders, like he knows me personally, maybe he leaked the videos and the pictures. Well, guess what, America? I have never seen the pictures and the videos to this day, because the phone is not even in possession of the client, Epps. It's been out of her possession, secured since December 22nd, 2024. So there you have it.
So you would say another
being leaked to the person it was sent to, and there's only one person it was sent to. That's the abuser.
So that would
no
mean
one has asked him yet. Since you had it and your attorney admitted it in the publication of Daily News, what happened to the pictures? How did it get out of your phone? But then again, I've seen this behavior before, so this is consistent.
Yeah, because if there could only be, I see this as, and I mean, common sense would tell you only one of two people had this video or whatever, these pictures. So how did it end up in everyone's hand if one person doesn't have their phone? I think what you're alluding to is maybe another investigative agency is in possession of this phone, one that would be I guess, federal in nature. So people are, I think, missing that. But I did want to go back to one of the questions I was going to ask you, because I did see Latina Brown brought it up. So I understand from sources that people also are claiming, well, why didn't Epps go to someone? Well, I understand this from sources that she did complain all the way up to who you're supposed to, which is who? It was the deputy commissioner of equity inclusion, Wendy Garcia, Mrs. Consa Frita herself, always hanging out up there with all these clowns. So she complained to her, and apparently, as we've noticed with numerous people, just in a recent lawsuit with a sergeant and a lieutenant in internal affairs, they complain here, the EEO, and nothing happens. We've seen this in other cases where they reference this. So did she ever tell anybody, or can you confirm if that's true, the story that she did say something to Wendy Garcia? Because that would, kind of give a little more context to things.
So what I will say is that there's two things going on. There's a criminal side, there's a civil side, and I have an obligation to technically both. So I don't want to tip my hand about things that I know, but I will say I'm aware of those sources, and I'll just say I'm aware of the sources, but I won't confirm whether or not that's true. But just look forward, because there's going to be an amendment to the original charge I wrote. And when I do that, it's going to have a lot of details that is going to make people understand why let's just say the upper management is not very happy with Epps because she knows a lot of things about a lot of things. That's what I will say.
I see that, but I see that there's a repeated pattern with this administration and in general, these New York City Police Department cases where it features the same cast of characters and the same behavior, and also the smear jobs and everything that happens with that, because it's been a setup from what I'm seeing with the cases. And I'm just trying to stay fair and not even get, throw my own situation in there, but it would happen to me too. It happens to be a smear, and they do this whole setup, and, there's a history with these individuals that we're discussing. So,
well, look, but let me just interject something since you mentioned that with you in general, with you in particular, and you were supposed to be part of these, groups that's going to take over America and overthrow the government and all this other kind of nonsense. So, but see, people don't really understand how I operate. I don't care about that. Matter of fact, I'm more likely to represent a person who is the unpopular client than anything else. The more unpopular they are, the more likely I am to represent them. So people ask me, why I represent Sal Greco? I said, because his First Amendment rights were violated from what I see. And then I also represented someone else who wasn't necessarily a popular person, was the NYPD rant. So a lot of people don't know that, but I represented him too. And when it was NYPD rant, they changed it to the rant. That's how that person got his pension. He got his pension through me when I was with another law firm. And they told me, Eric, you can't represent him. He's a racist. I said, I don't care if he's a racist. I said, that's according to you. I said, racists have a right to the First Amendment too. See, that's how I answer it. So my point is, they're not going to scare me off because they want to badmouth people and throw red herrings out, because I don't eat red herrings, by the way. So there's your answer.
Yeah, well, I thought the red herring is the new police commissioner. Actually, that's her nickname, apparently.
Oh, well,
but
he's not really running anything. But hey,
police commissioner name only. That's how a lot of us see it that way. But So this case now, also, I saw you put out a statement in regards to you're looking for any evidence or any if anyone knows of anything that occurred either during or after, witnesses to anything. So what I'm also going to allude to is, again, I had a post up when this happened that, again, through sources, they told me that there was a detective, which we're going to call like the mop-up guy, one of many people that were involved in going back up to Maddrey's office directly after this happened. They went as far as going on the 14th floor. We don't know. They didn't even have access because you need special access to this. Just a regular cop can't go up there. And this individual in particular was transferred later on, was a member of the chief of department's office, but that they went up there and they were taking out what could be, I guess you could say is potential evidence. And I understand that they also refurnished and refurbished the entire office, even though they had spent about $20,000 prior to fixing the office for when Jeffrey Maddrey was there. And then later on, right after, a day or two after, they were already taking things out of there, which you would consider it to be a crime scene. So do you know of anything about this, whether it be this individual or anyone else? Because I hear that you put out a statement looking for anyone that knows anything about this.
Yeah, I'm looking for witnesses that know anything about sex abuse and sexual harassment and those various claims related to the alleged allegation person against here in Maddrey in this case. And I'm looking for anything related to in the department wide, and I'm also looking for witnesses. But I can tell you, because some people know and other people don't know, that I was a member of the New York City Police Department. One of the things I, was really interested when I was still there is the sex crimes, because I used to do that too. So I am aware of the information about this detective. I'm aware of a number of different things that allegedly occurred. But again, I have to be fair to the process, to the criminal side and the civil side. But I can say we've developed a good bit of information about what happened. That's what I will say.
Yeah.
And don't forget, because I gotta get ready to go, because remember I have the conference.
Oh, yes, yes. So if you want, I guess you got to step away for about a couple of minutes, and when you come back, we'll be discussing the nightclub extortion racket with the whole 3-4 person involved. That was another one of your clients. So
yeah. So I got a conference. So people don't know, I have a conference call on another federal case that starts in about 5 minutes. I'll do that, and then I'm gonna come back. All right.
okay, that's fine with me. Fine with the audience.
Okay. All right. All right.
Yeah. So he'll be back. He'll obviously has to deal with that, but I find this, whether you got to take your feelings out, no matter how you feel about one or the other. I'm just presenting the facts and the evidence, and only reasoning for me to even get a little animated is, I was also smeared, as you know. The Daily News was writing things about myself going off of whatever these clowns in the police department tell them, and then in the end, you found out that nothing they said was true. Everything is false, and they just railroaded me out because they didn't like my friend. And it's a political thing. And it's funny because now the mayor is trying to kiss up to the same individual that said that, I was criminally associated with them and whatever else other nonsense they said. But there is another individual that's actually involved in this Epps case that's named in the complaint. And I want to show you something that came up, and I posted it yesterday because there was a committee hearing, if you don't know, in City Council. The New York City Police Department was there. They were getting asked questions. They were grilling, Police Commissioner Tisch and all the members there. And seems like somebody had a hiccup. Yeah. There's the illustrious Chief of Department, John Schell. Now, I don't know. Might look like he had a long night. I saw one of his people, one of his close associates that run interference for the police department and the Eric Adams administration, try to show an 8-second clip, say this isn't true, where he's twiddling his fingers. Now, could he be texting on a phone, or is he sleeping and he's twitching? I don't know. But I know if a picture like this hit his office or went in the paper and says, cop dozed off for a second, I'm sure that he would destroy that cop's career, transfer them, give him a 20, 30-day hit, something like that, saying that that officer was conduct unbecoming for falling asleep, even if it is for 2 seconds, he had his eyes closed or she had her eyes closed. But if they do it out in the public in front of City Council where everyone's watching, that seems to be okay, right? So I'll let the audience decide. Do you think Mr. John Schell was sleeping, or was he just on the phone? And I come to understand that he does a lot of searching on his phones, and apparently he likes to post a lot on John McCarry's show or this show, because I guess he's got a thing watching this show or John McCarry's show. But he doesn't have the courage to actually come on the show and answer any pertinent questions regarding his actions and behavior. But you decide if you think that he is dozing off in front of City Council just before he's supposed to testify. Yeah, here's one of his tweets. Silence is golden at times. The national PCAST is coming. It's going to be epic. Sponsored by Nanya, whatever that means. Nona. We need a name, though. Need recommendations. Talk soon. I guess you call them the Gotham Brothers, right? Him and Kaz Dodry. Is that their nickname? I mean, I can't keep up with the clown show because it's just a complete disgrace with the police department. But a little bit of what you're hearing, which is serious stuff. And again, this ties into the behavior of Eric Adams and his administration and how they do things. And this is why I've been critical of the Justice Department's handling of Eric Adams' criminal case, whether they want to dismiss it or whatever they're doing. The dismissal is not merited on the grounds that they're saying is it's political, okay? But the problem is the other day, there was an individual who pled guilty, Mohammed Bahi, whose life is over. And what are you going to try to say now? He pled guilty to something that he did himself. He's, I guess, a solo co-conspirator. I mean, come on. The guy worked for Eric Adams. He went over to that other Turkish guy, and he went there and told him, don't worry about anything. The FBI can't find the money. That's what Eric Adams told him to tell him. And now he's going to go and He's got a felony record, and the swagger man with no plans running around in fancy suits, acting like the mayor when he's just a perverted criminal at this point, I got to say, because he's got to answer for this other lawsuit. And it's nothing but what can I say? The best way to describe it, it's a blank show, you know, in New York City. And again, your taxpayer dollars are well at work here with all these lawsuits. I mean, here's another incident that you're seeing on the screen. So this guy, I guess this was yesterday with Tom Homan, or the other day. It's unbelievable. Oh, look, they have a comment here from Almost Done. Shell, hold on. Shell started Comstat today saying if he looks like he's sleeping at Comstat, he's actually on his phone. I mean, John could have addressed this on this show. You know, he doesn't have to address his troops. He was on his phone. Also, if a police officer is on their phone and they send a picture in, or some citizen journalist or / hater sends the picture into One Police Plaza, he'll discipline them, right? Isn't that how that works? I mean, you know, this is what I'm saying. Everything in this police department is arbitrary, depending on who you know or your part of power structure. Discipline is not even. It's not. And if you can't hold your own supervisors, the upper echelon, you can't hold them accountable. How can you say you're going to hold a poor little guy on a totem pole, a police officer, accountable for minor infractions or any kind of infractions? Which is why I believe the Epps case is very important. Here we go. Moshi says Shell is a keyboard gangster, won't face you. It's true. Nighthawk 13666 says unfit for duty. That's could be another one. You know, we could go down the line with all of this stuff and say why is Shell now being treated differently than, you know, Officer Joe or Officer Jane, right? Who's, you know, if they even, and I've seen it before, you take a picture of an officer and he or she may not be sleeping, all right? Or they might be on the phone, right? And then they say, well, that's, you know, you have to take whatever it is, a 2-day vacation hit. You got to lose about 4 or 5 hours of your time. But why? What about him? He's doing it in public. He did it in front of the committee. He did it in front of the city council, this budget hearing committee, right before he's testifying. And it's real slick how now he's saying he's on the phone. How do you know he wasn't sleeping and his fingers twitch in his sleep? I see people twitching, you know. It's a, yeah, Drone Ranger. At least when Shell's asleep, he's not shooting unarmed people. That's a good one. The Lone Silencer. Well, Bootlicker News swears anyone claiming he was sleeping is stupid and low information. We all know Bootlicker News is the definition of low information. Yeah, John McCarty's chiming in. Inattentive on post. See? And that's funny because the individual that is running interference for John Shell is Orrin Levy, otherwise known as Viral News, but reality, he's Bootlicker News. Here's a guy that if he smokes another cigarette, you're going to see the smoke coming out of all pores and any hole in his body. And he's really, he looks like a Muppet. And this guy runs interference. And who this guy is, and I've referenced this before, he was for Antifa. He was pro-freedom movement, pro-Black Lives Matter, anti-Eric Adams, anti-President Trump. Then he became pro-police, pro-Eric Adams, pro-President Trump. Then he runs around and he takes all this alleged footage of Trendiaragua and all these people, but it's been alleged to me by numerous people that watch this clown on the street that he just chases random Hispanics and picks on them and say that they're Trendiaragua. I don't know why people think this low information goon it could give you any kind of real news. You could do what you want, but I noticed that anytime there's something in the police department, he's literally like the DCPI of the police department. And we've had dust-ups, John and Eric on a Finance Unfiltered. This guy has done stupid things and I guess try to take his report his stuff online. This is all baby stuff. I'm just telling you what I see. He immediately ran to his defense when nobody was defending Shell. Shell could defend himself. He's got his own account, right? Oh, here's Billy Blastoff. I am out for 17 years. Did anyone ever get in trouble for sleeping while on duty? You'll be surprised. They get a little cute with the words and the terminology, but there are officers that have been disciplined for that. They just don't. They're not going to say sleep. It's unfit or unattentive on post, something like that. They can easily give you a rip for that, which is ridiculous. If it's like you take a picture, I understand. I've seen police officers sleeping, like outright sleeping. I'm sure other police officers have seen the videos of other officers for a joke. They do it. Somebody might be asleep. Maybe they're on meal. But I'm talking about somebody who closes their eyes for a second and is just sitting somewhere. And then they, they give this, and then this becomes, you get penalized for this. You get disciplined for this. I don't think it's right that you discipline Officer Joe and John Shell doesn't get disciplined for that. But who's going to discipline him? The police commissioner? I highly doubt it. It's highly disrespectful as well with the police commissioner in front of you. Yeah, John Ranger said it again right here. The cop who lost a prisoner a few days ago needs to use the same excuse. I wasn't asleep. I was reading job emails from my mandated job cell phone. That's the best excuse that I can hear. Because if he's going to use it, a police officer should use it. But then we're going to see if they're going to allow that. Because you know how the disciplinary the disciplinary system, this disciplinary matrix, which Eric Dim has rightfully coined how corrupt that whole system is. How does that work for someone like John Shell? How is this going to work for this officer that they said fell asleep with this prisoner? And since I did mention Eric Dim, if anyone can, if it's feasible for you, please, if you can go to his website, his son Derek. It's still an ongoing fight. They're doing the best they can, fighting this horrible disease. So if you can, go to the website. If you could donate. If not, please keep him in your thoughts and your prayers. I think there's also a website now. I think Squad, www.squad-life.com. You can buy the T-shirt and you can help him out in that way. And you can support little Derek in his fight against brain cancer, because this is it's still troubling to hear someone this young have this disease. And really, there should be a lot more people out there supporting Eric and Derek and his family. And I don't know. I see a ton of people posting nonsense on X all the time, but I don't see enough people trying to post this. And I'm talking about influencers or whatever you want to call themselves. They're still trying to say Eric Adams is a MAGA mayor and all that stuff. The same individuals. Maybe they're going to have another binder saying Epstein is oh, hey, look. And just in passing with Jeffrey Epstein, I see a lot of chatter with that also, with Jeffrey Epstein's case. People are forgetting that Ghislaine Maxwell, represented by friend of Eric Adams, Artie Idala, and friend of Steve Bannon, who Steve Bannon also did see Jeffrey Epstein and did a small documentary with the guy, Mr. MAGA himself, right, Steve Bannon? And only 2 minutes of this has ever been released. Spent time in Paris and New York with Jeffrey Epstein. Steve Bannon, the guy you think is Mr. MAGA and runs Trump behind the scenes, allegedly, from what you would hear in the New York Times. But so this thing with Epstein and the files, Ghislaine Maxwell, she was convicted in her trial, but she is appealing this. So some of the stuff that's in the files may be still in an active case, albeit it was really bad. The whole rollout was terrible. I understand that. It doesn't look good. But that case is 6 years old from when Epstein died. Then the case prior to that is another 14 or 13 years old from when they started investigating Jeffrey Epstein. That started in Florida. So Pam Bondi may or may not know. I don't know. No one's asked her this. If she knew about this case prior from the state case in Florida. But They handed over 200 documents to her, and apparently she thought that 14 years of work is summed up in 200 pages, which it can't be. So the other thing would be, though, that the things that they took out of his home, which are, I think, tapes, DVDs, this may or may not be allowed to be released to the public. That's about the only thing I could tell that should be released, that can be released out of this, that would make sense, because I don't think there's any more files. See, look at this. This is a slap in the face to many people, having 3 people here, and look at them. And it's always the same people, right? These people that are also connected to Steve Bannon, by the way, out there parading around these files, and they thought this was cute. And I keep telling people, I think this is another, it's another low information hook line. They're trying to hook you in with this Jeffrey Epstein case. And I understand, because it's important. People want transparency. But here's something people don't know, and you're finally starting to hear about it. And I said it the other day on my friend's show on Slingshot News, and now it's actually became public 24 hours later, and that's P. Diddy. Now, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, probably in his 30, 40 years or whatever he's been public, has rubbed elbows with just about everyone. And you've heard numerous civil cases that about him in regards to his activities. You heard about the freak-offs. We've heard about the parties. You heard about who he knows. We've seen video. I mean, this guy slapped around his girlfriend. It's pretty disturbing. And the fact that L.A. didn't release this till the statute of limitations ran out. But you see all of these things. So he finally gets charged from the Southern District of New York also, even though they went to his mansions. They found baby oil. I think it could have been baby oil found in another case that we heard about recently. So they took all these items out of his home, and we come to find out he's in this case, and yeah, there's all kinds of charges on him. But one charge in particular sticks out. Conspiracy. How is he charged in a RICO case that it's only Puff Daddy as the sole defendant in the case? Now, you could say he might be singing. He may not be. I find that more troubling than anything in the Epstein case, which is pretty much, I'd say 80% of the stuff you need to know is out in the public. The logs, the stuff that's on the DVD. We don't know if the DVDs exist. They might have destroyed it. All that stuff we may never see. Or you may not know about this till years later, till Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal is heard. But in this case with P. Diddy, how is he the sole conspirator of a case? Now, you heard the other day, it was a sheriff that they got saying that this sheriff in Las Vegas was involved in another incident with P. Diddy, and it's also involving Odell Beckham Jr., who used to play for the Giants. He's a wide receiver in the NFL. I guess he's not in the NFL or whatever it is. But so there are 2 co-conspirators in this one case, and that begins to tell you, all right, so if P. Diddy is in a RICO case, why are we not hearing, and we hear about this now, this case from Las Vegas. This guy, I believe, is he's now a police officer or sheriff in another county somewhere else. Why aren't we hearing about those co-conspirators? Why don't we hear about that? Yeah, see right here. It says 2 new celebrities have been named in the ongoing litigation against Sean Diddy Combs in an amended complaint filed by Ashley Parham, who accused Combs in an October filing of gang rape in her in 2018 after she insinuated he had something to do with the death of Tupac Shakur. Parham has named Odell Beckham Jr. and comedian Drewski, real name Drew Desbordes, as the, what's that? E-News showing up there. I guess, but as 2 of her assaulters. Both individuals have denied her claims. Of course, that's all they do. But you see, if there's an incident like this and he's been charged, why aren't they now defendants in that case? Because remember, it's a RICO case. So either he is, I don't know if he's cooperating or not. Maybe, maybe not. Either he is doing that, or they are not telling you who those co-conspirators are in this case. Because what? Are they politicians? Are they celebrities? Are they cops? How far does that go? And I would really hope that America would say to themselves, the P. Diddy case is a lot more important than whatever this Epstein case of a guy he's dead. You can't rearrange the furniture anymore there. It is what it is. But the P. Diddy case is active. It's important. And I think it involves the same, almost cast of characters, if not maybe a little worse. I mean, I saw P. Diddy hanging around politicians. I've seen him hanging around. He's associated himself with a guy that we've referenced on this show numerous times. They used to manage their consofrito, the mob associate, self-admitted criminal. I mean, he was at his former restaurant in 2014 hanging out with Kim Kardashian. Okay, at that some kind of party with the Kardashians, and there's Jimmy Rodriguez and P. Diddy together. So, I mean, this guy knows everybody, yet he's a solo co-conspirator of a case. I've never heard of anything like that. And I think America should really do, you need to pivot and focus on what's really prevalent. That case, something that doesn't pass the sniff test. In fact, the actual indictment, although what he did is strong, I don't know how strong the indictment is because of the conspiracy thing. I don't know how you conspire solo. So I think that's something that people need to look into more than be fixated on this whole Jeffrey Epstein file case. So I don't know if we have hold on. The lone silencer. We've seen Puff with everyone from athletes to presidents of this country. He might be worse than Epstein. Listen, that's what I'm trying to get at. I think that there might be something to that, because why are we not hearing about anything? King Cujo says, and also JC says he doesn't know Sean Combs. That's hysterical if he actually said that, because that would mean a lot that he says that. Yeah, that's see Marlon Bethel's in here. He says Maui, Hawaii. That's where that sheriff is right now. So he went from I think Vegas Metro to Maui, and he's also in this case, in this cover up, and that's the story of the theme of today's show. Is really everything you're hearing is also cover ups going on, and they come from big officials. These officials. Someone who's a chief or commissioner, or police commissioner, something like that, could be covering up all these things. So who's to say that P. Diddy, in his case, they're not doing that either? Hunter says those Hampton white parties in East Hampton were always rumored to have that happening. You see, I'm sure the audience has some, they probably know a lot more about this than me in regards to what these allegations and these rumors have been around this guy forever. Marlon Bethel says P. Diddy's fixer Fahim Mohammed had contacts nationwide in different police departments. Again, you're hearing the same thing over and over again, that there's contacts with or associations to police departments, and it's kind of like a corrupt thing, I don't know. Oh, I think is Eric. I think Eric Sanders is back, so let's have him back on. There you go.
Fast and Furious, right?
Yeah. Nah, well, I thought I would bring up a couple of topics that people wanted. It kind of falls in line because it's the same kind of stuff, but that P. Diddy case and the Epstein thing and how that's being handled. And I think that P. Diddy is a lot more important to this nation, finding out the whole ramifications of that case and what's going on, than someone who's been dead for 6 years now. I think P. Diddy could be worse. And I don't think people should look at the case and say to themselves, he's charged with conspiracy, but he's the only conspirator in a RICO case. That can't be. It just can't be. I don't see how that is. I think there's more questions than answers there.
Well,
and I think that should be.
People, but, I guess you got to wait to see more. But then again, the case is scheduled to go to trial, right?
Correct. And you just heard about the new suit that I just mentioned, that with the woman in Maui and the Vegas Metro PD guy who was involved, and Odell Beckham. So why aren't they charged in his case criminally as a co-defendant? Because it would only make sense. I mean, that's how I see it.
Well,
but
maybe they just learn about it now. Who knows?
Yeah, that case
for years.
But you would think people would stop being low information and worrying about a guy who's dead 6 years ago when they're propping around with these conservative influences with the binders, and you have a real active case that's live that has a lot more questions than answers, and a guy who's probably more involved with a lot more people than just the circle that listen, I said P. Diddy was involved in the political circles as well. He hung around the same people, and you saw him at political events. So how far does that go? That's really a rabbit hole that,
Remember the campaign said, vote or die? What was it? Vote or die, right? Remember that?
Yep. Yeah, it was him. That's what I'm saying.
Die.
He's in.
Whatever that means, I don't know.
He's involved in this kind of stuff, but people they're focusing on Jeffrey Epstein, and you'll get that, but it may not be what people think. Whereas this guy, I think you might have hit pay dirt with him because he is very involved with numerous people, and it's public knowledge. It's right in your face. Unlike Epstein, which is more shadowy, and you hear things, but you can't. There's no real picture evidence. There's a couple of things you've seen. P. Diddy's everywhere. It's all over the place. I mean, I saw LeBron James in a dress going to his party or something. I mean, I don't know what's going on, Ed, but there's a lot to be. There's a lot to still learn about that. That's what I'm saying.
Well, if you remember, look at history. What is it? J. Edgar Hoover, wasn't he wearing a dress or something back when they were doing all the surveillance of all these groups, subversive groups? And then meanwhile, he's wearing a dress. So you never know what people are doing sometimes in their prior life. Not that it really means anything, but who knows?
Yeah, see, and here's someone. Someone said, Hunter says Hillary and Harvey were neighbors in the Hamptons. She definitely knew Harvey was a huge perv. Mira Sorvino was blackballed in Hilo because she wouldn't allow his deviant behavior. I heard a little bit about that, but that's true. And again, that's I believe that's Harvey Weinstein. That's a whole another case of another guy.
If you had people making these points, this is what we're talking about. Why it's not unusual for people not to disclose. You see how these people make all these comments? People always know information. It's just a matter of whether they're going to take legal action. That's the issue.
Here's a really good question from Marlon Bethel. Does Eric Sanders think Quatishia's case will lead to a deeper corruption case?
Well, that depends on how far they investigate. But I can tell you, I know a lot of interesting information. That's what I'll tell you.
Yeah, and what I wanted
to say.
If anyone
knows the history of me, I've been told about this police corruption stuff even when I was a police officer. So I have a motivation too.
Yeah, because there's a problem here for a long time. But I'm saying now with this case in particular, in my own case, you had filed something, and it said that you in my own case we couldn't go for about a month or so because you were investing a lot of time into the whole Epps case, and that you referenced that it mentioned the upper echelon of the New York City Police Department and the office of the mayor of New York City. So my question reading that, and I would say that I'm reading into yes, it's a federal investigation in there. Does Quatishia Epps know Eric Adams at all? Was there any ever interactions with them?
Well, like I said earlier, I don't want to tip our hand about things that are not out in the public domain yet, but I will say that I was on virtual on-call jury duty for about 30 days. While I was out, then this Q case, I'll call her Q, Epps, because she's Q to me. Because if anyone knows about me, I don't really take that many cases. If I take a case, that means I believe in it and I'm loyal, and believe me, it becomes a personal thing that I want to make sure and to get the best result I can for a client. So I took on her case, and believe me, I spent a lot of time from December all the way up until maybe the middle of February, solely focused on that case. And I mean, a lot of hours a week. All right. A lot of hours. And then I finally got back to now handling the other caseload. And to answer some of the questions, I had conflicts with certain cases. I did file a letter in Greco's case, in Sal's case, for example, to say, hey, I've been gone for these reasons. And then I explained to the court in detail, because if you've been gone, they want to know reasons why. And one of the things I said was, besides the jury duty, I also was investing heavily in this. and without saying, but saying, okay? Because this is not the first time I had the federal government intervene in one of my EEOC charges. It's happened before in a lactation rights case. And then this case, I clearly will say it, because federal action has been taken. They intervene in this. How much they've done, I'm not going to talk about. And what they are doing, I'm not going to talk about. And some of the stuff I don't even know about what's going on. Matter of fact, I'd rather be that way, that we have two different tracks to protect the process. And they're going to intervene on another case. So,
all right.
We know a lot of things about a lot of things. Let's just put it that way.
I say,
That's
I just
what
want
makes upper management nervous.
Yeah, because that letter. I think I posted it myself also on my what came from my case, and you could see this letter and Eric Sanders references the upper echelon and the office of the New York City mayor. So take that for what you want. I mean, I can't say much. He can't say much more. But I'm asking for everyone out there, because I'm sure that's the carrot that's dangling in the wind is, does Eric Adams have any involvement in this? Because what else can that guy not be involved in? But there is the next case I want to speak to you about. And that's that New York City Police Department nightclub extortion case from the 3-4 precinct involving the commanding officer there and certain individuals, James Caban and Eddie Caban. And I guess there was a Lieutenant Rodriguez that was in that command and was actually transferred because of all of this. Maybe you could get into that a little bit, explain the whole scope of the lawsuit.
Yeah, and so I recently filed a charge of discrimination in the case involving Emilio Rodriguez. He was the integrity control officer at the 34th precinct, and the allegations he was making besides discrimination is that there was a certain racket going on, a protection racket. There were certain locations, although I did not name the locations in the actual EEOC charge, which is on my website. I do know the location. And those particular locations, the allegation was that the commanding officer and other parties in the precinct were taking a no enforcement activity. In other words, protection. They were protecting a particular location because those were, quote, Caban's places, all right? Meaning James Caban. Well, there's been allegations, of course, it's been floating out in the public that there's some protection racket, including one gentleman, a club owner in Brooklyn, that talked about this and said, that basically the police put him out of business. But this is not a shock to anyone, because if you remember, or if you don't know, remember I had the Club Love and Lust case in Brooklyn about 2017, 2018 that was involving the same kind of allegations in the 7-2. And I talk about the same thing. That's a club that 50 Cent was loosely affiliated with. Well, they try to say he was the owner, but the point is the same issue is done there. Certain enforcement was taken against other places, and then the preferred places, no enforcement activity is being taken. And in the 34th precinct, and we know we can make this case because after it hit the paper, a number of citizens called me and emailed me in support of Rodriguez, talked about how the police weren't enforcing things. They weren't enforcing the noise codes. They weren't going and inspecting the clubs. People are double, triple parking, so you can't even drive around. God forbid if there's an emergency, you can't get around. They were throwing parties in the park. I mean, I never heard this before. Bringing generators in the park, throwing parties. There was all kind of activities going on, and the police did nothing about it. The 311 calls, they were opening them and closing them right away. But we've seen this before because it's happened in Brooklyn South. I believe it's a 6-0 under St. Fort. So this has happened before. And I don't know if you saw in the paper, Sal, but the other day the police commissioner says, hey, we have a new system. I forgot the name of it, but it's a software that's going to allow us to evaluate and make assessments of the 311 calls. Yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, but that's how you cover it up. So now when Tina Moore, who wrote the story originally, did a follow-up story, she found out during the course of her investigation, writing an article, that there was 5,000-6,000 or maybe more than that. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but literally thousands of 311 calls and communications, text messages, etc., that went to the 34th precinct, and only a small segment, maybe 300 cases, action was taken on. So what happened to the other ones? So yeah, so that case in particular, and if you look at the claim, he specifically talks about James Caban came into the precinct, and he thought he was the police commissioner, James Edward Caban. They would salute him. Other people thought he was the person, and other people also recognized that he was there, and they thought it was Caban as well, including with his own security detail, etc. And then the other part of the allegations that they were motivated to do this, according to the allegation, because they thought they would get promotion as a benefit. So I'm assuming that case is going to be investigated as well, because if that's true, that's the type of corruption that the police department should be trying to ferret out.
Yeah, but we've said this forever, because the other brother, Richard Caban, as you know, all the Cabans are hanging out up there, Con Sofrito in the Bronx, and that place is kind of like the ring. It's the ringleader of all this nightclubs, and like all the nightclubs all answer to that place, because that's where they were gathering up and coming up with their schemes or whatever. And there's a gentleman pictured here in the middle also. That's Dennis Rodriguez. He was a sergeant. He was in one of the fraternal organizations, but he's another guy pictured up there, Conso Frito, with these guys. So again, and you're criminally associating with not only the manager of that place, but also all the other cast of characters that are there. And I also understand that there were other allegations of, I guess, people that were paying, whoever it was, fraternal organizations, but they were paying to get promoted. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Well, like I said, I know a lot of things about a lot of things. So I will say I know a lot of things. But I can say, since you're talking about Consofritos, and this kind of gets back to your case now, I started subpoenaing information that I couldn't get from the city. Anyway, I got a bunch of information from the state liquor authority. And then, of course, we were able to find out that through emails that some police officer in the 45th precinct wrote a violation. That violation was never fully investigated, because at some point it went from the 4-5 to then the human trafficking part of what would have been OCCB in the old days, which is the Organized Crime Control Bureau, but now the Detective Bureau. And we can see that the case was referred for human trafficking, a sergeant responded for the human trafficking, and then that's it. Nothing more. It's because some of the allegation was that there was drug dealing and the sale and the movement of sexual favors for money at Consofritos. But it seems like it was never fully investigated. At this point, we still think it wasn't fully investigated. And that is why Richard Caban owned the place, at least on paper, and then Jimmy Rodriguez was associated with it. So, yeah, there's some interesting stuff that's going on there. And people may have heard references to the Puerto Rican Mafia, and then you figure out who the Puerto Rican Mafia is.
Yeah,
we know a lot of things about a lot of things. They're not always public, but they're going to be used in litigation.
Yeah, because then I saw in this case in particular, in the extortion case, that one of the people referenced in the case hired their own attorney and is trying to do what essentially sounds like a slap suit against you and your clients. I don't know about you want to address that.
We're afraid. I wish, let me tell you something. Attorneys try to pull that garbage on me all the time. Not me personally, my clients, but they try to get me sanctioned, all this other kind of nonsense, because I have the audacity to bring a case in good faith, by the way. So they can do it. It's just a waste of time and money. But this time I'm going to be more aggressive. And next time somebody pull that on me, they're going to get to see the Eric Sands me don't get to come out. I'm going to be super aggressive against them, to go against them, and then go to the bar association and try to have them disbarred. I'm here to do a case. I represent people. It's not personal to me. And to even suggest that I would do something unethical, anyone that knows me, no, I won't take a dime from nobody. No, I'm beyond reproach. I'm a very straight shooter. And if I catch someone, a client, not being truthful with me, believe me, they're going to do one or two things. Either going to withdraw, keep it, or I'm going to withdraw from a case. I'm not a game player, but I'm not tolerating anyone threatening me anymore, because guess what? I'm not afraid. Believe me, I am not afraid of anybody out there. And coming from the police department as a lawyer, I'm not intimidated by anybody. I temper a lot what people do to me and say in the public, but believe me, this time in 2025, it's going to take a very aggressive approach. And so far, the person that's tried that against me, Maddrey's attorney, I'm batting 1,000, dismiss every time. I'm not a game player, and I'm not going to play this time. With Rodriguez, they can bring whatever case they want to bring against him. But believe me, there's going to be a reckoning for it, because the same attorney in that case did that against one of my other former clients, where they made him the monster cop. 22 cases against him, 22 cases dismissed. And this attorney was one of the main provocateurs of that kind of nonsense. So believe me, there's going to be hell to pay for that defamation suit. If the corporation counsel won't represent him, I'll represent him.
Yeah, because I saw that was also a caveat to this whole case, because that happened almost immediately. And I don't know if they're trying to, I don't know if it's going to try to I'd say lower that whole nightclub extortion. I think that nightclub extortion thing ties into everything else, because as I've provided the evidence, Jeffrey Maddrey was hanging around Jimmy Rodriguez and at Consafrito himself. He's pictured with the Cabans and Jimmy. So there's another place that he went to. Philip Banks, another guy that went there.
Sal, if you can bring up the Romero case, or even the Hernandez case. I don't know if you have it, but you can see the picture of them so the people can see. It's not like it's being made up. There's pictures of them all together, beautiful. And I put in a lawsuit.
Because it's, this whole criminal association thing where they go after people and say, I don't like that you're hanging out with a guy. And then meanwhile, everybody, and Wendy Garcia, we mentioned her. Wendy Garcia is another one over there, picture with Jimmy and them. They all not only break the rules, they flaunt them that they're breaking it in your face, because these are self-impressed people, starting with the mayor himself, with Eric Adams. So I think this case,
and they have the audacity to then talk about some kind of discipline, like they're beyond reproach, and they're not. Those are people, a bunch of hypocrites, and they ruin people's lives financially, their reputation, etc. And then the courts rubber stamp all this garbage because they don't know. And if the little bit you try to bring, it becomes a whole litigation game to try to get around that too. So, but they do a lot of damage to people, and it's not just this administration. This has been going since the turn of time. It's just now we have a lot more information to fight them over this. So this is not just, these cases are not just about Sal, and they're just not about Epps. When I take certain cases, it's about the greater good, because I'm a utilitarian. I believe in these things should apply to all people, and whatever's going to have the most impact. And that's how I decided I'm going to take my cases, whether the people are popular or not, but they're going to have the biggest impacts. And since they did a criminal association to Sal, why? Because he's associated with Roger Stone, whatever that means. He's a Trump supporter, what the hell that means. I thought it was still a First Amendment. But meanwhile, these morons are running around with Jimmy Rodriguez, Lucchese crime family person, and all this other kind of nonsense. And everyone's just going along like it's no problem. Eric, his people, his association. You watch a Showtime special, talk about how he's so associated with the same people in Queens I know, the Seven Crowns and everything else. These people glorify themselves in doing all this because they have the power. And then people like Sal and other people that are members of service, they get crucified. They get terminated. Their houses get, they lose their house. They lose their reputation. They lose 18 years worth. And why? Because they bring shame upon the department. Meanwhile, you got all these people, all of them. And you can just look on the website. You'll see the pictures of them. I'm not making this up. Jimmy O'Neill, the PBA guy, all of them.
Pat Lynch.
Hanging out, having a great time, and smoking cigars. There's no smoking indoors in New York City restaurants and businesses, by the way. Everyone just does what they want to do. It's the old saying, do as I say, not as I do. Isn't that beautiful? When you can make the rules, right?
Yeah.
That's why they get upset with me, and I don't care.
And in my own case, remember, they told me I can't even go see go visit the cannoli store to go get a coffee. But meanwhile, you saw the place. There's nothing going on. It's just a regular.
And I went there personally. I like the place.
Yeah. I said, "Are you kidding me? This is the police department of today's day and age." I don't know. Going out now, I'm thinking, what are we going to see next in the Epps case? Because I guess people are still talking about it. Because someone even asked, were both of them suspended? There were no charges.
Of course, there are no charges because she didn't do anything wrong. I mean, that's like common sense.
So does she have her pension right now, or is it no good guy letter because this is pending? Kind of like I have no good guy letter.
She'll get her pension starting in July. She didn't get a good guy letter because our police commissioner didn't do the right thing, but that's okay. Because if it works out right, they're going to pay dearly for what they did to her. Because at the end of the day, they suspended her without a finding against her. And that's not what you do to people. If you suspend them, I presuppose that you believe they engaged in misconduct. They had 30 days to investigate, and guess what? When that 30th day hit, no charges. Why? Because she didn't do anything wrong.
I
It's
see.
disgusting. So the next thing on the horizon, because I didn't forget about these guys. They may have thought I forgot about them, but I'm going to bring a little hurt to the city of New York and the mayor and the upper echelon again, because they seem to believe that they can do and say whatever the hell they want to do. So you have people like John Shell, Cass Daughtry, who was a police officer and became a detective and commissioner. I still don't understand how, but then again, he's driving around Maddrey to all his little police officers he was having relationships with, whatever that means. So that's his claim to fame. I'm going to bring a case against him for all that nasty stuff they were doing on Twitter and all that First Amendment stuff, suppressing people's speech. That's going to be coming soon, maybe even next week.
I know exactly the case you're talking about, because it's involving, I believe, a certain two. I guess, as someone in these comments like to say, a show that not too many people watch. Might even be on this channel. This is what one of the people in the comments that's in here that's linked back to these clowns, if not one of the clowns themselves.
Well, that's okay. Good. So now that they're linked, you could tell what Eric Sanders said, because if anybody knows me well, I'm a very straight shooter. Matter of fact, I'm tempering the things I really want to say, because I have to try to remain professional, and I'm becoming kinder, gentler as I get a little bit gray hairs here. But I'm still haven't lost my zest, though. Trust me. I'm gonna sue them, and there's a report to back them up, because the Department of Investigation, as well as the City Council, said these guys were out of control. And matter of fact, they violated the Hobbs Act. I don't know why there's not a federal case against them. Oh, no one ever thought about that, right? That's what happens when you talk too much in the public.
Probably because Email Bove might be blocking it with the whole Eric Adams can't be prosecuted. Apparently, he's above the president, above a diplomatic status. You can't touch this guy, apparently, even though he's guilty as sin of all these things, as everyone's pleading guilty for him. But he's not going to be held accountable. He gets to walk around and do whatever he wants, which is why I worry about your cases, because if he's involved in any of this stuff, how does that go forward? Are they going to say, we're moving forward, but we're not going to charge him, or they have to charge him because he's so intricately involved in this stuff?
I don't really. Okay, I guess I can chime in on this little political part. I don't really deal with the federal government that often, but the little bit I've seen of how they operate, they tend to be much more conservative than state practitioners or state prosecutors. So generally, when they bring a case, they believe they have the goods, right? So I thought it was unusual that they would take the position to file a motion to dismiss or withdraw and not say the magic words, such as, upon further review, we believe that based upon the credible evidence that we will not be able to meet the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. Therefore, in the interest of justice, for example, we're going to move to dismiss. Those are the magic words. Mm-hmm. This time there weren't any magic words. It just basically says some political stuff that has nothing to do with why. But we already know, since the prosecutor has immunity or have discretion, essentially, that the case is going to go nowhere. If they say they're not going to prosecute, there's not a court or anyone else can impose upon that, because remember, there's constitutional mandates. You can't impose things on other branches. I mean, that's a whole nother complex subject, but the bottom line is the case will get dismissed. But I was curious as to why it would be dismissed with prejudice, without prejudice. I didn't understand that. Why? To bring the case months later? Well, what's going to change now from now to later? That part I didn't understand. And I guess they didn't adequately explain it, but it doesn't really matter anyway, because the end result is, even when the court brought in someone who can act as a other side, even that person says, no, dismiss it with prejudice. So anyway, to me, that's a stain on how the process was handled. And it's unfortunate, because other people who don't have political power are not going to get that benefit to do the same thing. They're just not.
I see it the same way. It's the process is you're trying to protect the whole process, because now
I want to comment on this guy. Ron Layson says something here. He says Maddrey was not convicted of felony while active, therefore his pension is safe. Okay, well, you need to read up on the pension system and how this works, right?
Mm.
Yeah, read up
If
because in
he's,
certain circumstances you can lose your pension. So just read up on that.
yeah, but I think he technically he retired under investigation, right?
Yeah,
He was
but that
suspended.
doesn't matter for pension purposes. It's just a matter of whether or not there's liability. But that's way down the line. Remember, this is still in the infant stages, right? There's investigations going on, but he hasn't been accused of anything formally, other than on the civil side. Of course, we accuse him of an EEOC charge. But
Mm.
whether people's pensions are quote safe is a question way down the line.
I see. So it would
Because there's
be,
certain circumstances where a person can wind up losing their pension. So, yeah.
yeah, I see. So one last thing I wanted to get your comment on, because you did comment on this, and that was that Detective Machado who was twerking in her music video. Remember that music video happened, I believe, last weekend, and I saw what you commented on that. So I don't know if you want to reiterate your thoughts on that whole thing, because
Well,
it's a black eye. I know.
okay, so I'll say this. This is probably the first time people hear me even talk about this kind of thing because I generally don't grant interviews, but Sal's a good person. He's a gentleman, which is why I said I'm going to do it and I'm going to help him. But if the people who know my old partners and stuff know that I was always a very straight, direct person and by the book. So today's police department, I couldn't survive. I can guarantee you, because I couldn't tolerate a lot of stuff I see. The beards, tattoos on their necks, hands, arms showing, all kind of stuff, including how you carry yourself on and off duty, because some people believe that when police officers are off duty, they don't have a certain standard they're supposed to meet. Yes, there is a standard. And one of the standards that you meet is that you not only represent yourself, you represent the community, you represent the department, and the theory is that you're supposed to be beyond reproach. And when you jump up on a pole and engage in certain behaviors, you not only make it difficult for yourself, you make it difficult for your partners, you make it difficult for the communities, and you bring down the overall quality of police officers. Because when female officers don't think about this, and especially when I used to work with them, and people walk up to them and say miss or ma, she ain't fucking miss. All right. That's officer so-and-so. Because if you start to get people to believe that you're somehow not a police officer and stand for the entity, that doesn't stop the person from slapping you and taking your gun from you. So it's not a joke. It's not funny. It's not anything. It's not entertainment. Because if you have a certain mindset, you don't belong in the police department, period. And I said that, and I was the only one to say that. And see, I'm saying it publicly. I believe that. If I was there, they'd probably sue me a million times, because a lot of things I just wouldn't tolerate, because it's gotten to the point now where anything goes in the department. You got all this excessive drug dealing, you got cops being arrested for drug dealing, and all this other kind of stuff that you didn't see before. Why? Because they're coming with the me mentality. They're not for the greater good. They're not for the department. They're not for the public. They're for me. So I'll play uniform out in the street. But if you jump up on pole, is that the way you treat the special victims people? Even though I don't know how you got into special victims and you just got back. But that's a whole nother story. But do you treat the victims the same way, or do you treat them different? I mean, I don't know. All that goes into the mindset. So no, even if she wasn't a police officer at the time, she's coming back into the department. In my day, all that stuff was frowned upon. You wouldn't even make the cut. But then again, when I was being hired, there was 60, 70,000 people that had to sift through. Now they barely got anybody to pick from, which is why you see people come in overweight. They don't want to make the run. They leave the academy overweight. I mean, come on, it's just ridiculous. Their uniforms look like slobs. I mean, I can go on and on. I'm very straight. This is still the best job I ever had in the world. To this day, I would still do it. Although I can't run 1.5 miles in 7 minutes and 12 seconds like I used to. Not that I even want to do that anymore. But my point is, I took it seriously. I loved it, and I would do it again.
Yeah, I want to point this out, because I don't know if you knew this part, but first of all, this detective was also on the Brady list. She was on the naughty list from the Bronx DA. It says just CPI 50 precinct, whatever that means. I guess it's either got to be something that's private, you will never know, or they're going to show it later on. She left the job in October 2021. Allegedly, they keep saying is, these sources say that in January 2022, she filmed this. And 8 months after October, which is what, June or July, she comes back. She asked to come back to the job, and she comes back to the job. But 5 months after that, she's transferred into the special victims, Manhattan special victims, and then the other special victims in the Bronx. 18 months later, as a full-blown detective. But what I want to ask you here is, wouldn't you go through candidate assessment division here? They're going to be questions asked, right? So if they asked her, what have you done in the last 8 months, whatever it is she says, and if there's any, would they not ask her about, have you done anything, or is there anything we need to know about? And then what do they do from there? Because wouldn't this come back around to haunt them right now?
Well, it could. And that's what they're supposed to check for. Every once in a while, people slip through the cracks. I can go on with some pretty famous people who slip through the cracks. That's a whole nother story. But in theory, they're supposed to be able to check a background and then decide if they're going to disqualify people. But from my understanding is that she had a rabbi, but then again, he wasn't a rabbi because he's Puerto Rican. And then that's what helped her to get back into the department, because he approved the reinstatement. And by the way, reinstatements are not guaranteed. Approved the reinstatement, and then miraculously, she went from going to a command to special victims, and then now she's a third grader. How did that happen? There's some people that don't make third grade. They're 10, 15, 16 years in the police department. They don't get a third grade. They don't even get a special shield, a merit raise. They don't even get that. And then she ascends to a third grader. I don't understand that. Yeah, and I said before, and I'll say it publicly, when you see certain behaviors in the public, you got to take a look at police officers. This is a noble profession, at least it's supposed to be. And if you start seeing certain behaviors, you need to take a look at your police officer, because you know why? That's going to be a liability down the line. And when you do stuff like that, you make it more difficult for the other female officers, because you know what they'll say? Oh, she's hot, mommy, Latina, mommy. And that's what they do. But they're only thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about their coworkers.
Because it sets a bad precedent going forward. Unless, again, you're part of the Sofrito crew, the Dream Team, the Gotham Brothers. If you're in with that crew, you can do whatever you want. I figure I got to ask you, what do you think of that guy? So I mentioned before you came on about the migrant shelters, right? With the $6.9 billion that was spent by Eric Adams, and he's up there, and they had these criminal referrals in their hands. Apparently one's missing for him. And now the DOJ is investigating that. But wasn't there a certain individual that worked in this administration that is referenced in a lawsuit in talking about migrant shelter contracts and migrant shelters that stated, "Where's my crumbs?" And that's the one and only Timothy Pearson. What do you think about that whole thing, that he's already being investigated? How do you look at the DOJ investigating that without saying Eric Adams and Timothy Pearson have to be, I mean, they're 1 and 1A as prime suspects in that?
Okay, so I guess I should comment on this, right? Well, I can't.
Yeah.
Let's just say I don't necessarily see eye to eye with Mr. Pearson or a few other people in the administration, because I go way back with them. So I'll say this. From the reports, he was engaged in improper conduct, meaning he abused these security officers and going to this location and had the police falsely arrest these two security officers. This report on the Department of Investigation wrote about this. Yeah. But it's interesting because the contracts themselves, some of them were no bid contracts. And generally, no bid contracts, you'll see maybe $10,000, $15,000 usually. But these other ones are being given to, as they're digging further into, friends and associations. And then, they've been to Japan. And that's where Ingrid Lewis and, all this other kind of stuff. And just miraculously, someone from one of the big commercial, they happen to be in Japan too. I guess they figured they were going to discuss it in Japan. No one will know about it because, hey, we're not in New York. No one can monitor us. Surprise, but the Department of Investigation was waiting for him at the airport with the feds. The understanding is to seize, and now there's an open case on that. The point is that under this administration, more than any other, I've never seen so many investigations like going on at the same time, related to the school bus contract, the camera contracts, the shelters now, how they got the shelters, how much they opened it for. And now apparently the Roosevelt Hotel, which has sat down in New York City forever, is made, if you sell, it's worth $1 billion. What? The Roosevelt Hotel, $1 billion? $1 billion would it be? I mean, who's kidding who here? So the question is, if you're looking at these investigations, they're white collar crimes. And you already know white collar crimes are complex to prove, because things that could look illegal can be perfectly legal, and which is why these things go on. So the way you get around that is forget about the investigation. What you try to do is get the people who have the integrity to actually manage things. The problem is when this administration ran, they believed I'm going to make the police safe business. They believed that, and you didn't get any of that. What you got was investigation about contracts, the apples, rotten apples that were sold to the Board of Education. I go on and on. The point is, what you got is a whole bunch of schemes. All right. And then half the administration had to leave. I mean, it's like embarrassing. It really is. But Timmy himself, yeah, Timmy's an interesting guy. He's like the rest of them interesting. He hates me though. But they call him Timmy. I call him Shaft though. He hates me. I mean, I don't dislike him, but I'm clean. I'm a straight shooter. So they never thought I was a great guy because I don't play games.
That guy, man, he's a character. I think he's the worst out of the bunch. As bad as Kaz Dodry is, I think Timmy is the single worst. He's involved in so many. I lost count. I don't know how many lawsuits he's in, investigations. I really lost count. I've been trying to keep up, and I lost count with Timmy Pearson personally. So, what do you think of Eric Adams' re-election for mayor? Is there any chance there? What are your thoughts on the mayor's?
I don't see it. And there's again, all right. Eric and I over the years known each other, right? But we were on both sides, two sides of the aisle, and we haven't spoken now in a while. But let's just say we don't see eye to eye either, because I challenged him with the Guardians, and I challenged him about how the money was being managed with the Guardians and the snake rog and the funds and all. So this goes a history a long time. This is like, for people who don't know, this is what, 37 years in the making. This clash is coming. It's coming. It's here already. So I don't think so. I think he's not going to get back the election, because if it stands to reason, Adrienne Adams is in the race now. This is now me talking politics, right? She's not going to be able to raise the money. So she won't be able to come in, right, and win. Eric, remember, has been told that he has to pay the $10 million back from the first election. So how is he going to get matching funds for this election? The bottom line is, I don't see it happening. And I think really, even if there's no criminal case against him, they just want him out. So it's not going to happen. And more importantly, you could fool people once, but you're not going to fool them twice. So, and remember, he just can't get the people in Harlem and go and do a sermon, what I call them, because that's what some black leads have a tendency to do. They tend to do that. Yeah, they know the sermon business, right? But you got to have a cross section of people. And if you can't get Jewish voters and white voters, Italian voters, and Irish voters to believe in you, you're done. And I don't see that happening, because it's just riddled with scandals.
There was another one. Somebody mentioned the father, Michael Iguina, arrested in the Bronx soliciting a sex worker, NYPD chaplain. Another scandal in the Eric Adams.
Yeah. So it just seems like that's what it is. And then Ruben Rodriguez is now supporting Cuomo. Although, look, Cuomo's got his own set of problems with running. But then it becomes the best of the bad bunch. And that's the problem with voters. And I mean, look, this gets into the whole philosophical discussion about voters and this and that. You know, the bottom line is we need more alternative sources of people that could run, but this is technically a two-party state, even though you have the working family and the independents, but it's really two parties. Until there's more alternatives, we're still stuck with the bad bunch of apples.
Basically,
it's one, or you got the one with the worm, without the worm, and this is what the problem is. And I can see this comment about a person making, because most people never hear me speak in public. No, I'm very straight.
They don't know. They
don't about my words. Yeah.
they don't know you. I guess how you are in real life.
Even it's funny because even my cases when they tell me, oh, Eric, we could sell this case, so we'll give your client money and then we'll pay your legal fees, because that's the trick, the legal fees. And I go, nah, we're going to have a global settlement, put all the fees in, because if you saw the article about Gloria Allred the other day in the paper, she charges up to 75% to the clients. I'll never do that. Nope. I'd rather be dead. There's no way I'm taking advantage of people. I just won't do it. I just can't do it. I'm not going to do it. Whatever the fee is, that's what I'm entitled to. And that doesn't mean I make money all the time. Sometimes I lose money on cases, but I still don't rip the client off. I don't do that. I'd rather be dead. Even as a cop, I didn't do that. You can't give me nothing.
Well, I told you when I was referred to you myself, that was your reputation, coming from somebody who's very well respected, and he was an executive in NYPD at that time. The last question I'm going to ask you, because I end the show with this one. How do you feel about Eric Adams calling people Negroes in front of a room, which was, I don't know.
But that's, first of all, that's nonsense. All right. We just don't do stuff like that. And when I hear the word Negroes, you know what that sounds like? We're back in the 70s. No, if you want to see and hear the word Negroes, go back in the black exploitation films. But then again, those black exploitation films were designed to create heroes and all this other stuff past the man. So you heard that. But come on, to call people Negroes, come on. Is that what we're doing here? See, that's where the problem is, right? Because if you have a cogent argument and you're logical, you could speak to people. It's when you try to do this diversity, I'm gonna divide people nonsense, and they're going after me. No, what they're going after is corruption. They're going after me corruption. But then people didn't do their homework, because if they did their homework, they would have known back when he was with the state senator that there was a senator. They did an investigation where they had a transcript where they confirmed that he engaged in certain conduct with the Resorts Casino out there when he was part of the committee. And then that's how Timmy Pearson got his job. But see, no one ever checked. There's a transcript because I sent it to you, remember?
I do have this transcript. It's
okay.
pretty,
so see,
it's pretty
I
damning.
Back up what I'm talking about.
Oh boy, I think this is it.
So this is a biblical moment. You know, when Jesus was on the cross, he said, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. All these Negroes who are asking me to step down, God, forgive them.
This guy's a trip. This guy, he's a trip. I gotta tell you. And he doubled down. He did a few days later in front of the press corps and doubled down on this again and said there's nothing derogatory. And
but to me, it doesn't surprise me because I've seen this before. There's a whole culture of them that came up at the same time. I came up at the same time with them, but I was over here, the straight-laced guy, and they were over there. They were self-promoters. Him, Anthony Miranda, DeLacy Davis in the East Orange Police Department, James Davis, God rest his soul, he was shot and killed. But they all have a different agenda. Their agenda is me. I was on, let's do something about the hair test. We should challenge the validity of it because of these different legal reasons. We should talk about the promotional exam. We should deal with the CCRB. It should remain part of the police department. The college requirements, you have them, but it didn't make the department any better. By the way, we're supposed to be more educated, but the department is poorer, in a poor state now than it was when they were high school graduates. So this is the kind of stuff I wanted to do. They weren't interested in that. They were interested in partying and hanging out and the same stuff they're doing now. So this is not a surprise to me. This is consistent. Except when you get to a certain age, you're supposed to relax. You can't party until you're 80 years old. But this crew,
these guys are a whole another stratosphere. Look, Eric, I think today has been other than the time you had to step away, I think this has been a look into not only some facts and evidence in your case, because what I do here is try to be fact-based analysis. But we learned a lot about you that some people don't know about your past that you had to encounter with Eric and all these other cronies around him, like Anthony Miranda, another Consafrito guy himself, another guy with investigations all around him. To you, it's no surprise. You knew them. No. To us, we're like, oh my God, I can't believe it's just getting worse by the day.
Look, next time I talk about the police work, because there's other people that says, oh, Eric Sanders was really a cop. Now, my old partners will tell you, nah, he was a real deal. And I talk about the stuff I used to do. See, now I'm kinder and gentler, but believe me. But we weren't corrupt. We were very straight, but all the crazy stuff. So yeah, I really did police work too. I got a lot of stories.
I tell you what, I'm gonna actually got to tell John McCarry that you might have to write a chapter in his upcoming book, Crumbs, the Eric Adams administration story. So you might have to write something in there about all of this stuff, because this is I don't know what to say. I'm learning stuff I didn't know about Eric Adams today. That it's really like mind-boggling. But so Eric, where can people, because you're back on X, how can he reach you on X and on your website?
Okay, I just reopen this X again, because I'm into social media. I just post about my cases, but it's Esquire Eric Sanders, I believe it is. But if you search it, you'll find it. But you can go to my website, the Sanders Firm PC.com. Or if you put in lawyer Eric Sanders, guarantee you it'll come up to me. You'll get it. But yeah, I talk to people. I talk to people all the time. I talk to cops. I talk to a lot of cops. I represent them on a federal, state, and local level. But I talk to people about a lot of things. And you call me, you have confidentiality, obviously. So, call me up. And if anything related to Maddrey, I want to know about. If there's anyone that's been a victim of sexual harassment, any other employment stuff, call me up and maybe I can help you. Okay. Thank you. And thank you for having me as your guest.
Of course, Eric. I think this is, like I said, this was a good way for people to kind of hear you out after years that you really haven't done anything other than that time when you came on. You were my voice. You were my voice at a time where people were throwing sticks and stones at me, even though there was no facts. There's no actual. What they're alleging I'm doing was the opposite. It was never anything there other than they don't like the guy.
And by the way, for the people who don't know, even the investigation showed they checked their entire system. He didn't breach their databases. He didn't do anything related to subversive activity, but yet he was terminated. Why? Yeah. Association.
I wasn't hanging out at Consafrito. Man, that's would have been a place to be. You get anything you want. Even I get promoted there, apparently. You might have got promoted.
That's the rumor. And like I said, I know a lot of things about a lot of things. So
yeah. So folks, I say that's a wrap because we've been going for a while, but I think we covered a lot. Feel free. Listen, next time I'll be on Tuesday, but tomorrow I'll be back on with John McCarry and Marlon Bethel on the Finest Unfiltered 8:05 live in the morning. We'll be having a weekly roundup and a round table. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to the audience, to the haters as well. You could try to debunk things, but the facts will remain. And that's what I'm here. I'm here to be fact-based analysis. I can't be one side or the other. You have to look at things from the middle and not be low information. That's the goal. America could come together if you're not in a low information bubble. Please know who the charlatans are. Know who's running around lying and trying. You have to figure this out, but I'm going to try to help America move along. No more low information. Everyone out there, you have a good day. You have a good weekend. I'll see you on the Sal Greco Show next week, but tomorrow morning, 8:05 live with John McCarry and Marlon Bethel. Don't miss it. Weekly roundup. And our thoughts and prayers are with Eric Dim. I love you, Eric. Say hello to Derek for me. And if anyone can,
that's right.
Please donate. Please donate to the cause.
Thank you.
So this is a biblical moment. When Jesus was on the cross, he said, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. All these Negroes who are asking me to step down, God, forgive them. Are you stupid?